You know, it has to be said that Meghan Markle must be one of the dumbest business people that you've ever come across. I mean, you know, I don't mean that unkindly, but as I've often said, you know, you've got access to the very best people, or had. You're able to sort of tap into their brains, whatever, and say, well, how did you do it, you know? And, you know, you often got the chance to go and meet with people, to talk with people, to sort of see, well, what tap into their world? What did they start it with? Meghan, you see, suddenly decided, didn't she, after her 40 times 40, which was an utter and unmitigated disaster, really. This was an idea that she thought was going to launch her as this great female entrepreneur. You know, this sort of thing like, I'm telling everybody in business, if you just give 40 minutes to another struggling business person, that would turn around and everybody, well, we'll get on the right track. We knew it was a farce, didn't we? You know what I'm saying? But the bottom line was that didn't work. But this didn't stop Meghan, of course, then deciding that she could still become a businesswoman. But of course, with Meghan, it's never her money that she's wasting. As ever, let me explain. Morning, chums. Nice to see you. Thank you so much for joining me today, and welcome one and all brand new subscribers. It is lovely to have your time as ever. I hope you're keeping well, whatever you're doing. Are you? Yes? Have you got a hot water bottle? You should have. Look, particularly you're in the United Kingdom. Yeah, absolutely. Isn't the temperature dropping? And let's not forget, of course, the Energy Minister, Ed Miliband, promising, of course, that we're going to get lower heating bills. Yeah, this is what I mean. They just blatantly lie, don't they? Endless lies. And then they wonder why they're unpopular. And it's, oh, don't shout at me. Well, if you were any good at the job, people wouldn't, would they? What's your tips for keeping warm? An old tip of mine when you're out and about filming: box, tin foil in it, stand in it. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, yeah. I know you look a bit stupid, you're like a turkey ready to go in the oven, but at least you keep warm. You know what I mean? Somebody who's not keeping warm with her lack of success. Tenuous link there. Have we had a wave? Nice to see you anyway. Tenuous link there is Meghan Markle. She is now, well, I told you this was going to happen, if you remember, a couple of months back, because Ted Sarandos, the boss of Netflix, very clever man. And the bottom line is, he can afford to have a hit, miss, or maybe, as they call it in the business. And this is definitely a maybe, and then it went to just a dud, right? Because his idea really was to launch Meghan on his platform as this female entrepreneur. And suddenly, everything from the off was a disaster. People forget just how bad Meghan is at business. If you recall, she started out with American Riviera, hadn't painted the name, hadn't checked anything. The website was a shambles, the video was a shambles. And yet, as I said, Harry's money is paying for a lot of this. Then very quickly, if you remember, at the start of this year, she suddenly announced in the white video, as I call it, cat's out of the bag, you know, now I've got backers, Netflix want to come on board, not just as my television partner, but as my business partner. So I thought about it, remember that? I mean, really, you know, if somebody came to me and said, I'll invest in you, you think, right, okay, where do I sign? Because the bottom line is, every good business wants that. Where this has gone dramatically wrong is, you know, and you could go along with every single facet of this, because Meghan, as we know, certainly doesn't make jam. She probably made 1 or 2 pots of jam, I do believe, for friends and, you know, whatever, in the neighbourhood to try and curry favour. But she certainly wasn't there, you know, what did she claim in Birkenstocks or whatever, making jam during the pandemic? Rubbish. But the thing is, it's unbuyable. People just not buying into it. Netflix felt, and again, this is where Meghan's very clever, she dumped this whole idea on the executive at Netflix, because apparently the boss at Netflix, the executive head of content, basically said, oh, I think there's an idea here. So again, she's moved it from her idea to, not me, no, you suggested it, right? So there lies your problem. Here's where, again, where it's really interesting. She did the same thing with Liz Garbus, if you remember, with the documentary. Sitting down with Variety, she pointed out, well, you know, we handed it over to Liz, so we're just hoping that she's been able to tell our story through her lens. Basically, nothing to do with me. Liz decided to take hold of the project. Now, obviously, Netflix thought they could make some money. Now, it's very much known in the public domain that Meghan's brand, products, whatever, are now not going to be sold inside the pop-up shops for Netflix. They are very kind towards Harry and Meghan, let me tell you. I don't know why, but they are, because they're basically saying they're giving it time to develop and, you know, the products aren't ready yet, etc. Look, you've got candles going out allegedly with no wicks on them. orders cancelled, all of that sort of stuff. But the real telling point, and this is the pinnacle point of where Netflix has just given in, right? They've had enough. And this was very telling because a couple of months back, Meghan sat down with not one, but two people. She mentioned it with Fortune, and she mentioned it, of course, with Emma from Bloomberg Originals. Do you remember that? And basically, during the conversation, Emma had the audacity to bring up sales figures, all of that sort of stuff, because, you know, it's a business channel. You talk about that at great length. You talk about how you built something and where it went. All Meghan wants to tell you is that it's sold out. But if you have two and you sell two, you've sold out. You know, they wanted proper strategic figures. They had to insert on the screen, people forget this with Bloomberg, that bottom line was Meghan refused, you know, in very nice ways, but to give us any real facts and figures. This is where it went wrong for Netflix. They basically said, okay, now it's time to share your figures with us. You know, what are we looking at? Where are we at? What have we sold? And according to an excellent source, and again, I have to say allegedly, the bottom line is that Meghan simply refused to share that with them. Now, her counteraction to this from the former staff member is the fact that, well, Netflix are now dumping her, so she doesn't have to share those figures with anybody regardless, because, you know, whether she wants to admit it or not, she's not part of the deal anymore. They're not going on with the series, so clearly she doesn't need to do that. What they were saying was independently, if they felt there was some money to be made from that, you know, independently as it were, that they may be able to get some money, say from selling jams or the honey or whatever, they might consider it. According to that staff member, Meghan simply said, they have no right to my sales figures. Now, the way that she's reading it, according to that source, is that they will be envious of, you know, what she's done and how quickly she's done it. So why should she share any more unless Netflix are willing to continue with the brand? You see how quickly and how fast this fell. At the start of the year, they're interested. And within, 10 months, it's all collapsed simply because Meghan has either not been honest about what she sold. She could go over to them and said, I've really struggled, I've tried my best, I could do with some help. They've offered help, time and time again, they offered help with the social media. She didn't want to know. And so consequently, behind the scenes, this is truly why Netflix, very gently, but very politely, I have to say in their defense, have decided that they're not going to continue anymore plugging Meghan Markle's brand. Whichever way you look at it, a wonderful missed opportunity again by Markle. And however she spins these stories to Prince Harry must be incredibly clever, whichever way you think of it, because can it always be the other person's problem? Does Harry ever lift up his head and think, maybe it's just not them? But either way, they're now not continuing. And now we know the reason why. Neil Sean, Kensington.